Paddy Power are offering money back as a free bet if the horse you back finishes second, third or fourth to the SP favourite in at least 2 races every day this month. Max £25 per race. T's and C's apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Hello and welcome to the Monday Postcast. I'm Maddie Clell and this week I'm joined by Nick Watson to my left and again Jimmy Hill to my right. We haven't got a Paddy Power representative today, so I'm just going to scream out as many prices as I can. Let's crack on with it. We've got a lot to cover internationally as well as anything else, with a thrilling weekend of action in Britain, Ireland and America. We're going to pick out some horses to stick in your Racing Post trackers that ran well over the weekend, and of course there's another chance to win a free bet from Paddy Power. So first off, we're going to look ahead to the big races at the weekend. Now the November Handicap usually is the marker that the jumps is properly beginning in the Charlie Hall as well. We've had that this weekend. But the Betfred November Handicap is at 3.15 at Doncaster. Godolphin won this last year with a future Group 2 winner in prize money. Some of the big names also, Time's Up and Litigant, notable winners of this race. We've got the likes of Master of the World, Top Tug, Minotaur and Fun Mac engaged this time around. They're just a few names I've sprinkled in. We'll start off with you, Nick. Who's your fancy for this November Handicap?
Well, there's a couple that caught my eye. You mentioned a Godolphin connection there. John Gosden's got a horse in there who runs called Royal Line, who actually runs in the Sheikh Mohammed silks, so made a comeback this season. So in the maroon and white. He looks a very promising horse. He's run 3 times. He's won 2 of those. He was beaten in a 3-runner race at Newbury last time out behind Time to Study. I think in 3-runner races, particularly on the flat, you can get some funny results. And I'm not particularly surprised he got beaten that day, but on the other hand, I don't think it means that his kind of progression has ended at all either. I think a 1.5-mile handicap like this, it will be quite an interesting test for him, one that he might enjoy. Very, very well-bred horse. His dam was Malika, who's very, very well related. And William Buick's been booked already, so I think he would have a chance if he goes. The other one, kind of, we're at a really early stage at the moment. We're not quite sure what the going's going to be. I think it's soft at the moment. Was Saunter of Ian Williams's. Yeah. Ian Williams is a trainer I really respect under both codes, particularly with horses he picks up. And he got this one from David Menuzier. He's had 1 run so far, second at Newmarket. And he's so good with horses he gets from other people's yards. He knows exactly what to do with them, where to place them. So if Saunter goes through it at the weekend, again, those would be my 2 against the field at this stage.
Okay, on Royal Line, I watched his Newbury race and he was off the bridle quite early on. Does that not worry you in a big field competitive handicap like this, that he's not got that pace? Maybe he's a bit inexperienced still? He
is inexperienced. I just think it's time to sling him into a race like this, where he might appreciate getting a bit more cover, maybe, hopefully there'll be a decent pace on. I'll take your point, and I think he will definitely stay further. His breeding's all about stamina, so 1.5 miles probably is kind of minimum requirement. But again, if it's on the soft side and there's a decent pace on, I don't think there'll be any disadvantage to stay a couple of furlongs further. So you should see him staying on well. But I think this just might see him in a better light than in a 3-runner race, which can be tactical, can be tricky. And there's no disgrace in losing to Time to Study, who's a very good horse. Yeah,
he's rated very highly by a lot of people. Jimmy, what about you? November Handicap fancy?
Yeah, it tends to go to a younger, improving type, one that's not carrying too much weight. Rashun was the one who interested me. He rated in the 90s, won over course and distance last time very impressively. And he seems to be the sort of horse that's going the right way, seems to be able to handle most types of ground. The only concern would be he has been put up £8 for that victory at Doncaster last time. But I would still prefer him to the more older types who've had long old seasons.
A bit exposed.
Exposed. And I mean, if you want to take a chance at one at a bigger price, perhaps Eddystone Rock could be one for your shortlist. He's always the sort of horse that interests me in these kind of longer handicaps, bigger fields. But Rashun would be the type of profile that would be fitted to win this race, I would think.
Okay, so Royal Line for Nick and Rashun for Jimmy. As I mentioned, now this November Handicap for a lot of people signals the official cut-off, the end of the flat season altogether. So what would be our highlight of the flat season, do we reckon, this season, Nick?
Well, definitely for me it was Royal Ascot, because I was lucky enough to be on holiday in Menorca at the time, so I was watching it by the poolside, which was lovely.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, in the heat. And I just absolutely loved the duel between Order of St George and Big Orange in the Gold Cup. To have that little separating both of them at the end of 2.5 miles, thought it was a great finish. I thought it was in doubt right up until the line. Didn't know which one was going to get there, whether Big Orange would hold on. or whether Order of St George, who came with a really strong run in the home straight, was going to get there, and it was nip and tuck. It's exactly what you want to see in your racing. Went the wrong way for me, actually, because I'm a big Order of St George fan. Got the wrong end of the argument, but I just loved the race. I thought it was fantastic.
So your highlight was Royal Ascot, even though you weren't there. You were
Royal Ascot in the
up.
sunshine in Minorca. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
To be fair, I think no one could argue
You're
with
usually
that.
at Fosslas or something, aren't you, during Royal Ascot week?
I have been known to go to Fosslas in Ascot week, yeah, but no, somewhere a bit sunnier this year.
Got your priorities right,
Absolutely.
going to Fosslas. Right, you, Jimmy?
Well, from a personal punting point of view, it would have had to be Nikita winning the Ebor. Well, it's my favourite flat race. It's a proper long distance flat race, and that was very satisfying. I did also, from a purist point of view, I did enjoy watching Cracksman win the Champion Stakes. He did remind me of his Sir Frankel in winning that race. I know we hadn't really seen him put up a performance like that before, and it's questionable how good that form is for a Group 1, you could say. But still, the manner and the style in which he did it, the power which he showed towards the end was pretty special.
He's just relentless, isn't he? And I think on a day like British Champions Day, to have that spectacle to round the whole day off was just brilliant.
Absolutely. I think these Frankels, when they get a bit of soft ground, that could be when they are at their best. They don't seem to be the speediest horses in the world, but give them a long stretch or something to really show their stride, and they can be really impressive. Yeah,
me and Tom Siegel say it every week. We think they're real stayers, and with Cracksman, he hits top gear, and then he just sustains it all the way to the line. Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, we'll be straight back after the break, where we're going to tuck into the Badger Ales Trophy and the action at Wincanton at the weekend.
Paddy Power are offering money back as a free bet if the horse you back finishes second, third or fourth to the SP favourite in at least 2 races every day this month. Max £25 per race. T's and C's apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Okay, welcome back to the Monday Postcast. We've covered a bit of the flat action from the weekend. Now we're going to talk about the Badger Ales Trophy and back at the jumps. This is at 3:35, the feature at Wincanton. Carol's Destre, Theatre Guide, Labelle de Zobo, Yala Enki, the young master who was first past the post in this race in 2014, if you remember, before he was actually disqualified. Are just a few names who are entered. A bit of a race that tends to turn into a bit of a slog. We're talking off air about whether horses would need a run or not. Nick Watts, where does your compass point to?
Well, there's a few interesting ones. I think this might have a little bit of a bearing on the Hennessy this year. It kind of doesn't. It hasn't in previous years. Some years it's been more relevant than others. But there's a few interesting names. As you mentioned, Carol's Destre would be one of them, second in the Hennessy last year. I already fancied it to run a big race in the National, but missed the rest of the season because of injury. That's on the comeback trail. It'll be interesting to see how he goes. Labelle de Zobo is another one you mentioned. I'm not sure he's terrifically well handicapped, which is a shame because some of his form last season was very good. He beat Callet Mad in the spring, for example. Callet Mad won at Cheltenham a couple of weeks ago.
Over the novice hurdles, he's winning.
Yeah, he's kind of come of age, and he's had a benefit of a run as well behind Rock the Casbah on a track like Chepstow, which you wouldn't think suits him because the trainer has stated before he's better on flat tracks. If he's just a few pounds lower, I mean, he's on my radar, big price for the Hennessy as well, but the same kind of thing applies. I'm not sure he's that well treated, but with the benefit of a run, this would be an easier race than the Hennessy. I could see him going very strongly if he ran. And Southfield Theatre is probably worth a mention as well. Reading Paul Nicholls' stable tour today was quite interesting, saying he's not an easy horse to train these days. He has obviously had very good back form. He's second in the RSA before. He's fourth in the not the Hennessy, the Whitbread, or what used to be the Whitbread. You probably got it something different now. Yeah, exactly. But he's got bits and pieces of good form, particularly around Wincanton as well. And he had a full win challenging in it last year. So I could see him going very well as well, because I think if he's not easy to train, you have to pick and choose their targets very carefully and make sure he's spot on for them when he does go. So, and this is obviously a meeting that traditionally Paul Nicholls farms. He does very, very well.
Well, Southfield Theatre won the Grade 2 novices chase.
Yeah, it's not just in this race, but on Wincanton on Saturday in general, Paul Nicholls does very well. So I'd imagine Southfield Theatre would be somewhere near pretty ready to run in this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Labelle de Zobo, but as well, I'm not convinced he's all that well handicapped. And Southfield Theatre obviously has that back class, and Paul Nicholls is training brilliantly, really, as you say, for him to have his problems and then peak him exactly when he wants him to run a big race. He's done tremendously well, so you can't discount him. Jimmy, what about you?
I like Mr. Mix, another course winner. He impressed me when he won the Desert Orchid at Wincanton last time. He was always a horse I followed over hurdles. There were a couple of very good performances he put up over the smaller obstacles. I think on his day he's quite useful.
Very strong stayer, isn't it?
Strong stayer, but I mean, what particularly impressed me about his victory at Wincanton, I've always thought he's a horse who's needed soft ground. Now, whether it's going to be that soft on Saturday, I don't know, but a bit of rain this week, which I think is forecast, would certainly help his chances. This is going to test his jumping a bit more. It's a stronger race than last time, but I don't think he's badly treated still.
Okay, so that's Lebo, Dozobo, and maybe a quick mention for Carol's Destre for Nick and Mr. Mix for Jimmy. It's competition time now. Here's your chance to win a £25 or €25 free bet from Paddy Power simply by tweeting the answer to this question using the hashtag Postcast. Which horse won last year's November Handicap?
Paddy Power are offering money back as a free bet if the horse you back finishes second, third or fourth to the SP favourite in at least 2 races every day this month. Max £25 per race. T's and C's apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Again, welcome back to the Monday Postcast, and we're going to talk about the jumps action at the weekend now. A lot of mixed emotions for an awful lot of people. We're going to kick off with the Charlie Hall Chase. Bristol Demai and Black Lion, they served up a tremendous spectacle for Nigel Twiston-Davies. He's in absolutely flying form, but obviously it was disappointing to have Coneygree and Q-Card both depart early. First off, Bristol Demai, I think he's around a 33-1 shot for the Gold Cup, which could be a little bit bigger. Black Lion, I believe the route now for him is the Beecher and then presumably the Grand National again, which he finished 4th last season. And Coneygree and Q-Card, not sure where they'll be going yet, perhaps the Betfair Chase, but they're both 25-1 each with Paddy Power for the Gold Cup as well. Now, Nick, what was your assessment of the Charlie Hall? There was blaming of low sun, there was some dodgy jumps in there. Obviously, Coneygree's got that overreach injury, and Q-Card was all okay after his fall, but he's tended to do that, hasn't he? When the race really comes to the boil, he tends to just absolutely slide in a shocking jump.
Yeah, and I don't quite know why, whether it's just a little habit he's got into, maybe he's just become a bit careless, I'm not sure, but it's happened, I suppose, a few too many times for Comfort in recent starts, hasn't it, for him. Coneygree, again, it's unfortunately seems to go from one problem to another, and whether he can ever recapture the brilliance that he showed when he won the Gold Cup, you know, you'd have to question that slightly. Bristol Demai, I was very impressed with him. You'd think the Betfair Chase would be absolutely perfect for him. We know that he loves Haydock. We saw that in the Peter Marsh Chases. Often gets very soft there at Haydock, particularly for the Betfair. I don't think he's going to have many rivals. And I know Sizing John is the reigning Gold Cup holder, and of course he followed up a Punchestown, top class horse, and he's going for the race. So it's a stiff task for Bristol Demai. But I've got to say, you know, on his home turf, if you like, and on conditions that he's going to love and absolutely relish, Sizing John will have to be at his peak, I think, to challenge him. Now, obviously, with £1 million carrot on offer for the winner, Sizing John will be somewhere near ready. But I think actually all the advantages are with Bristol Demai for this race at the moment. Black Lion again ran a cracker. I think if you're a supporter of Black Lion, and I count myself among them, I've always liked the horse.
You can't not be, can you? He's such a tremendous horse.
But the point I was going to make, I think you'd just like to see him put one of these races away. I mean, he ran well in the Hennessy for a long time last season, then just weakened out of it. He looked as though he was going to win at Haydock, and then Vieux-Lyon Rouge outstayed him. Looked as though he was going to win the National. Possibly went too soon, and then of course got outstayed again. And then on last Saturday, he ran a cracker. But again, just got nosed out of it by Bristol Demai. You'd struggle to think of a better horse to go to the Beecher Chase than Black Lion. He's got the course form, it's a shorter track than the National, so obviously he stays absolutely no problem at all. His jumping is exceptional. You would just like to see him put one of these away and win it, just for his confidence as much as anything else, because I don't think he's won now since the RSA Chase. I think that would do him a lot of good.
I don't think you can call him ungenuine though, I don't think that's fair, is it?
I love the horse. No,
no.
I'm not calling him ungenuine at all. He's as game as anything. I wouldn't ever say anything at all like that, but just for his own confidence, I'd just like to see him put one of these away, and I think that would do him a lot of good. And I'd also, before I finish, just give a quick word to Definitely Red. He just seemed a bit sluggish at the weekend. His jumping wasn't quite there, it wasn't fast enough. He was always just getting away from his fences a little bit slowly. Danny Cook had to kind of just keep shoveling on the travel a little bit. Never travelling, was he? Yeah. Never travelling, but I think still to run on into third wasn't a bad effort at all. I would not give up on him by any means. No,
I'm in agreement. Now, a lot of people, including James Dunkley, have asked, is it time for Q-Card and Coneygree to be retired? Now, this comes in the wake of course, the whole Big Fella Thanks incident. That horse passed away, of course, at the veteran stage of his career, and a lot has been said about how long horses race for these days, when they should be retired, especially when, you know, that they're held in such high regard by the public. Q Card and Coneygree, do you think it was just unlucky and we need to put that behind us and think, well, Q Card could well win the Betfair Chase and Coneygree should be given another chance? Or do you think they're at that stage now where retirement's a thought that should be considered more seriously?
I'd say possibly more for Coneygree than Q Card. Coneygreen's just had problem after problem ever since the Gold Cup, it seems. Q Card, he's had a few problems jumping, but he's certainly there's nothing wrong with his kind of appetite for the game, and he's a very sound horse. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him take his chance in the Betfair Chase again. And I wouldn't put it past him to prove to be Bristol de May's biggest rival. I mean, we saw Cato Star in this race a few years ago launch a brilliant comeback win, when we'd all kind of written him off.
And this will be Q Card's Gold Cup, won't it, this Betfair Chase?
Exactly that. That's what I was saying this time last week ahead of the Weatherby race, that they can't kind of bring him along slowly this year with a kind of Gold Cup or a spring campaign in mind. He's really at the tail end of his career. He needs to strike while the iron's hot, while he still can. Yeah,
totally agree. Jimmy, what about you? Anything to add on those?
Well, you got to remember in the
and he was going very well when he fell at Weatherby. It's worth saying that. Who knows, he could have won, and then we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's a very fickle and difficult thing to tackle. Sorry, Jimmy.
Well, you're right. He could have won. He has travelled well at that point of the race in the past, and usually he kind of blows up in the straight. So it was still a long way from home, but he was meant to be a bit fitter this time. He had a bit of a race course gallop beforehand. But you've got to remember both Q Card and Coneygree, they absolutely dominated the Betfair Chase from 12 months ago. It just wasn't their day on Saturday. Q Card took a fall, apparently something to do with the low sun. He has taken a fall in the past in the Gold Cup. He can, put in a bad jump from time to time, but he was travelling well. Coneygreen's always been a very fragile horse, and they seem to be particularly unlucky with him recently.
You've got to praise them for running in that Gold Cup as a novice, haven't you? Because now you look at his career and you think perhaps his chance to win one is over, and they've done a tremendous job to, a lot of people would have said don't run him all those years ago, but he is a Gold Cup winner. We have to remember that.
But I mean, retirement, I think, is a ridiculous suggestion given what a great race he ran at Punchestown.
Yep.
Against Sizing, John and Jackadam. Look, he's a fragile horse. It wasn't his day on Saturday. It wasn't Q Card's day on Saturday. But to suggest, we should now be thinking of retirement for both of them, I think it's completely wrong. If they were pulled up and they would, just weren't quick enough or something, then maybe I'd say, well, yeah, that might be the case. But it wasn't like that.
No.
They were just unlucky. I mean, Bristol de May looked much, much better, I thought, than he did last season. I thought he jumped much better. Watching the videos of him last season when I was studying up for the race for Saturday, his jumping looked very sticky on occasions, even in the Gold Cup. But I thought on Saturday, early stages, and he was almost jumping too well. He was jumping really big, and I thought he was much more fluent. I thought he travelled sweetly. So he's got to have a big chance in the Betfair Chase. We know how well he goes round Haydock.
And he's still a very young horse. I think a lot of people are forgetting that. I think he's 6 years old.
Which is, it's too early to give up on him. That was the point I made before Saturday's race. Whether he's ever going to be a Gold Cup horse, I don't know.
On that spring ground have to be a concern.
Yes, and there still have to be a few question marks about him, given how many times he was disappointing last season. But that was much more like it from him. I just reiterate what Watsy was saying about Black Lion. And in fact, I'd go on to praise him further, saying that he looks a much better horse to me. Now they're riding him more prominently. I think he's jumping much better. I think he's travelling much better. He's not the biggest horse in the world. He might be feeling less claustrophobic or something. But that was the Black Lion we saw in the Grand National. And look, don't forget, this is an RSA Chase winner. And we know how well he goes around Cheltenham. Would he have the class to beat a Might Bite or something in the Gold Cup? Surely not. But he's certainly the sort of horse, everyone sees him as a Grand National horse, he's certainly the sort of horse I could see running very well in a Gold Cup.
Yeah.
And he'd prefer better ground as well than he got on Saturday.
Yeah, perhaps he's one who's always bound to be a bit underestimated, Black Lion, because people perhaps think he does it on his attitude rather than his class, but we have to remember he's a very good horse in his own right.
He's a strong stayer and he's a good jumper, so yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, I think we've got to mention the other Gold Cup trial, if you like. It's won by Corto Star and Don Cossack in recent years, so it's a pretty good race. The JNY Champion Chase, in which Outlander won. He beat Road to Respect. Our Duke, who was very, very disappointing. He was never jumping, never travelling. Total write-off for him. It's since emerged that he's scoped dirty, so perhaps it will be wise not to give up on him just yet. Any quick thoughts on that race, Nick?
Yeah, just forget about it. I mean, Outlander.
Just forget about it.
Outlander's been over here before, and he's not really cut the mustard at all. He looked awful in kind of the spring at Punchestown and on his comeback as well.
Very in and out, isn't he?
And yeah, he's bounced back to form here, but no, I couldn't entertain him for anything in this country whatsoever. So domestically, you know, when he turns it on, he's good. But the main thing to take out of it, like you mentioned, was the fact that our Duke ran so poorly. I think that's what we all wanted to see, how he would get on. It was too bad to be true. I think he scoped 4 out of 5 for mucus in his throat afterwards, and that explains when he had to be ridden away from the first, and that's not him. I mean, if you saw him in the Irish National last year, he travelled beautifully, and he never did that at any stage. So it's kind of nice in a way to know that it was so bad that you can just draw a line through it, because it obviously wasn't him. If there was any, and I hesitate to use the word Cheltenham already because we're only at the beginning of November, but if there was something for the spring at Down Royal of interest, it was Disco winning. Still not quite sure what his best trip is. I know he's won over 3 miles. I always thought he's better over shorter, but maybe he stays better now. You know, now he's maturing, but he's a fine jumper, and I could see him giving a really bold sight. And if I just need to have another look at him, if I thought he might stay 3 miles 2 round Cheltenham, then I think he would come into the equation. I'm not quite sure yet that he does.
No, I'm in agreement with you on that camp, but he's clearly a very talented horse. Jimmy, any thoughts on the JNY Champion Chase or anything else at Down Royal quickly?
That wasn't our Duke running at all. I mean, he was bitterly disappointing. We now know why. He scoped badly. I was slightly surprised he completed the race, but I mean, his jockey's a very experienced operator, so he must have known what he was doing. It probably will take him a while to get over it. I wouldn't surprise him if we don't see him again until the Lexus sale, something like that. And as regards the results, I mean, Outlander winning, I don't think that's going to really do something that's going to shake up the Gold Cup market that much. He was well beaten in the race last year. I thought he outstayed Road to Respect, but I wouldn't see either as a Gold Cup horse, and I thought, like what he said, the result that stood out more was Disco winning. He thought he jumped super. That's probably more his ground, on being on the soft side, than he might get in the spring, but it was still pretty impressive to beat a horse who was in the form of his life, Baliosin. So yeah, he would be the one I'd take away from Down Royal.
Okay, I'm going to ask both of you for a horse to put in people's tracker in just a moment, but before that, Nick Palfrey asks, how far can Waiting Patiently go, and what would be his ultimate objective this season? Of course, he won at Carlisle very impressively from Bellamy to Picton, I think it was. What do you reckon, Nick?
He's a really interesting horse. It's funny that Malcolm Jefferson's got 2 of the same kind. He's got Cloudy Dream, who's good at around that trip as well, and he's got Waiting Patiently, both coming through together. I think out of the 2, Waiting Patiently probably impresses me a bit more. Particularly in the finish, you know, I fancy him, and I think I read a vague plan that he's not going to go for the Bet Victor, but he's going to go for the December race at Cheltenham, which is like, it used to be called the Triple Print, again way before your time, Maddie. I forget what it's called now.
Caspian Caviar, maybe?
Caspian Caviar, the Vote AP, whatever it is now.
Massey Ferguson.
Ferguson, yeah, that's the one. So I think he's going to go for that in December, and I think he'd come down with a strong chance. And where he goes from there, who knows? But you know, if we're looking this side of Christmas, I think that's where he's going to end up. And I thought he won very nicely.
Okay, Jimmy, quick thoughts on Waiting Patiently for you? Did you see the race?
I just saw the finish very briefly before I came in here. Yeah, but he's definitely a smart young horse. I mean, he does have to have soft ground, doesn't he? So that's an issue for all the big spring festivals. But very young. I mean, he's got a load of potential. So so long as he keeps winning, you've got to keep him on your side, I think.
Where would you go with him?
Well, possibly look to step him up and trip him and aim him at something like the Peter Marsh, really. Yeah, I mean, something like that race, the December Gold Cup at Cheltenham, would be interesting if the ground was soft enough. It isn't always the case on the new course in December that the ground is soft. But, I mean, he was very impressive at Haydock when he won back there in January. So, I mean, races like that would be what I'd be looking for, because you know he'll love the conditions.
Yeah. Okay, now as I promised, we're going to move on now to weekend eye catchers. Just want one horse from each of you to go in the horse tracker. I'll kick us off. I'm going to sneak in there and say Kalashnikov, horse of Amy Murphy's, who won at Wetherby, a novice hurdle. He was super impressive. He's a brother to Kalan, who was a very useful horse as well. He's from a great national family. I think his dam was a half-sister to Kicking King and Four Commanders and loads of good horses like that. He really, really impressed me. Super horse. Stick Kalashnikov in your tracker. Nick?
I've got 3. Am I allowed 3? If I'm really quick.
Yeah,
go on.
for it.
Dam de Compagnie, who won at Uttoxeter on Friday, looks a really good horse for mares hurdles. Won very nicely on his British debut. The race after that, Philip Hobbs had a winner called Who's My Jockey, whose dam is the same dam as Hurricane Flies.
Yeah.
Won very nicely. Looks a real stayer. I think when he steps up in trip further, he'll do very nicely indeed. And one more, I hadn't really fancied much for the Bet Victor, but then I watched Architect win at Stratford last Thursday. It reminded me of all the good form he showed in the spring when he was unlucky not to be placed behind the road to Respect at Cheltenham, and then ran a good race at Aintree, probably over a bit too far, too long a trip for him. He's a very, very classy horse, so I certainly wouldn't rule him out of a big show in the Bet Victor if that's where he goes.
Do you know what price you can get on him, roughly?
I think, well, it's very much double figures, probably edging towards 20 to 1. I'm guessing now because I haven't looked at the price recently, but it'll be a juicy price.
Okay, nice 3 there. Jimmy, what about you?
Benatar for me at Ascot.
Yes.
I was very impressed by him. I think you were as well, weren't you?
Yeah, we actually put him in the RFO as I put him as my horse to follow this season, so I absolutely love Benatar.
Yeah, I mean, what impressed me was he did plenty wrong early on. He was very keen, very novice-y with his jumping. But I mean, he in the end, he nearly won by 4 lengths. And that wasn't a bad field. I mean, he was giving them all weight, and some of them had fitness on their side over him. So he looks to be a horse going places. I think definitely one to remember for the Spring Festival was Benatar. And I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, as this horse is owned by my landlord, but Topper Thornton ran really well at Carlisle on Sunday. He travelled and jumped well. And I think he's just a type of horse that we could be looking at for these long distance chases, particularly at somewhere like Sandown, when we get a bit of soft ground. He's well handicapped and one for the future.
Okay, right, we're going to go stateside now and have a quick word on the Breeders' Cup. Wahida won the filly and mare turf. We had Declaration of Peace as well. Excellent ride by Ryan Moore, that to win the juvenile turf sprint. And Talismanic, of course, the French horse who won the turf. They were the European train winners on the Saturday night. Any highlights or American horses we'd particularly like to come over to Europe next year? I know Connections of World Approval are saying they'd like to come for the Queen Anne. Well, if Winks goes, that'll be some showdown there. Jimmy, I'll go to you first. Breeders' Cup thoughts, any horses you were particularly impressed by?
Well, I wouldn't mind seeing some of those sprinters come over from the turf sprint. Those Americans, lady really looked to my eye, like she was actually outpaced, which is hard to believe. I mean, when we see her racing here, I mean, she hardly ever comes off the bridle.
No.
And then you looked at Washington DC and Marsha, and they were being scrubbed along early on. So those 2 horses out in front, I know they didn't win, but Pure Sensation and Vaquero, they went so fast. I think one of them holds the record for 3-4 furlong races or something like that they have over there. And something like the King's Stand, I mean, we think Batash is a good thing for the King's Stand already. Some people think that. But I promise you, these US sprinters and also the ones you get in the Far East and Australia, I think they're a much better standard than we have in Europe. So he's not past the post yet by any means.
Yeah, they tend to do particularly well, don't they? The horse from the US and Australia, they just have that raw early speed. Now, as you say, Batash, very talented, but be interesting to see how the form lines merge if they were to come over, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd be very interesting. Like I said, I do think it's very difficult for the Europeans to win in sprints over there, but equally, these foreign raiders, when they come over to Royal Ascot for the King's Stand, we know what a good record they have. So I think horses like that are something to keep an eye on.
Okay, and you was a big Breeders' Cup watcher or not?
I was at a fireworks party on Saturday night, so it shows where I hold the Breeders' Cup in my affections. And yeah, I had a lovely time, and there's some great fireworks. So yeah,
I think a lot of people struggle with Del Mar. To be honest, it's one of those really tricky tracks, and some of the form just seems to go out the window, doesn't it? But nothing particularly you've heard about or seen?
I had one little bet on Seventh Heaven, and she was trading round the back for most of the race and ran on into 5th, and I thought, that's why I went to the bonfire night.
Instead, got your priorities right on that occasion.
The draw is a real issue there, isn't it, at these tight tracks? I mean, I was on Rhododendron, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, she absolutely flashed home, but you could tell after about 2-3 furlongs she had absolutely no chance. I mean, the draw meant she just had to be, pushed right back. I mean, Warhead was very, very impressive, nevertheless, but still, I felt a bit aggrieved.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who probably wish they'd done what you've done and gone to the 5-weight display because they said it was just an absolute
I did at that point.
bloodbath from a punting perspective.
Yeah.
Quickly, a last mention, Scott Holt says, who will win the Melbourne Cup? Nice, simple one to end on. Any thoughts on that for you?
Yeah, I was always a big fan of Hartnell when he was running for Mark Johnston, and he's done very well in Australia, and he's placed in the race before. He's about 25-1 each way. I think he could finish in the frame again.
Okay, he's got that back class, hasn't he? I mean, he's been chasing around Winks for a good few years now. Jimmy?
Well, I'm hoping Marmello's going to run very well. Long thought this horse is the type who could run well in Australia. He was very impressive earlier in the season at Deauville.
Huge run last time in that, was it the Caulfield Cup or whichever one he ran?
Yeah, no, that was a good prep. So, I mean, things look good for him. I expect him to be there or thereabouts. Okay,
I think he'll be slightly shorter, but never mind. One of those two hopefully will be able to win. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to join the lads for the Tipping Postcast Friday show. If you like these postcasts, please make sure you rate, review and subscribe them on iTunes. And we'll see you next week.
Paddy Power are offering money back as a free bet if the horse you back finishes second, third or fourth to the SP favourite in at least 2 races every day this month. Max £25 per race. T's and C's apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.